Let's begin by talking about the city of Manila. And, of course, you know, the city of Manila had a seal. We were kind of outsourced to Mexico. The Philippines wasn't really a colony. We were just a province of a colony. And this was the seal, right? The top part, as you see, is the crown, which symbolizes the King of Spain. The castle, symbolizing intramuros, which means within the walls in Latin. And underneath that is a chimera, which is a symbol for illusion and for the four seasons. So the head is summer, the body, autumn, winter, and spring. 4 seasons. So you can see that the guy who designed the seal of Manila has obviously never been to Manila. But we also know this as being the seal of Malacanang Palace, for those of you who know Philippine history well. And you'll also know this as the seal of San Miguel Beer. But let's also talk about the word Manila and how Manila got its name. As we know, it comes from 2 words, Nilad, which translates into English as small shrubs with white star-shaped flowers that grow by the Pasig River, or Maynilad. Because May means that there are, and Nilad is the name of the small white star-shaped flower that grows by the Pasig River. And it's really easy to tell the origin of a Philippine place if you just listen to the name, right? Because if you see the name of the place in the Philippines is still in Tagalog, or Cebuano, or any local language, right? Something like, what's this one? Very good. How about this one? Oh, it's so dark. Really, man. Oh, this one. Oh, it's so small. Munting. Oh, it's so short. Pandakan. So you can see that if it's still in a local language, this place was more likely than not named before the coming of the Spanish. And then the Spanish come along and they bring Catholicism. And because of that, they have places with names like Santa Ana, Santa Elena, Santa Isidro, Santa Isabel, Santa Panciana, Santa Barbara, Santiago, San Diego, San Bartolome, or Intramuros, which is in Latin a derivative of Spanish. The derivative of Spanish. So you can see that if a place is named after a santo or a santo, it's probably named by the people who brought the santos to us. And then the Americans come in the 20th century, and thanks to the Americans, we now have places with names like Forbes Park, McKinley Road, Taft Avenue, Jones Bridge, Beverly Hills in Antipolo, Marlboro Country in Baguio, and we have a New York in Cubao. Right? So you can see that just by the language of the names of the places in the Philippines, you can see Philippine history. And if you speak Filipino, you will see your past in the way that you talk again. Because any word in Filipino that is organic, ancient, or archetypal, words like tree, sky, mountain, words like lake, words like sunset, words like sunrise, ocean, clouds, happiness, dog, those words will be in Tagalog or any local language. But if it's an object in the Philippines like a libro or a papel or a coche or a bombilla, lámpara or a reloj, most objects in the Philippines will be in Spanish. Because maybe they brought over the objects into our organic and abstract society. And then, 20th century, Americans come along and the word Kodak has now become in our language more than a brand. We use it as a verb, right? As in Kodak me, I'll Kodak you. Everybody get together because it's, right? Just as if a Filipino has to order a Pepsi, what's the word we use? Coks. Because Coks is our word for any soft drink. Which shows that there were no soft drinks, nor the idea or a concept of the soft drink until the coming of Coca-Cola. Okay, final test. Just as every refrigerator in the Philippines is a, every copier is a, every tissue is a, and every toothpaste is, very good UP. So you can see just by the way we talk, you can see our past again. But what is the story of our past? What is the story that obsesses me? What is my version of Manila's history? Because I'm a firm believer that there is no such thing as subjective history. History is always tainted by the viewer. So this history I'm going to give you right now is really my own personal idea of what I think my past is. Because back in 1571, when a king who had syphilis named King Felipe, who were named after, sent over this Tisoy dude over here called Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, he found a city called Manila. And if you look at the original map of Manila, which was painted in the 16th century by a Portuguese sailor, you will notice that the walls of our city are very different from the thick adobe walls that you see today. Because the original Intramuros was made out of bamboo. Because if one really thinks about it, organic bamboo architecture is the only Filipino architecture. Because if the building is made out of something else, like Manila Cathedral, like adobe, that building was probably built by some Tisoy colonizer. And I've always believed that it's this organicness and inorganicness, this mix of the past and the present, old and the new, east and the west, up and down, that really is the definition of what the city of Manila is about. And of course, the reason why is because we've always been caught between the east and the west. Because we're caught between China and caught between Spain, or caught between Asia and the United States. And you can even see this reflected in the people. Because if you look at this typical Manila family from the late 19th century, during the times of Jose Rizal, there's a little classification underneath there, just so we know who these people think they are. And you can see that this one says, Familia Mestiza Española, or Spanish Mestizo family. But who looks Spanish in that picture? The chair. Right? So it's kind of this sort of us wanting to be elsewhere, which I think has been the real definition of what it's like to be in Manila. Right? And as I said, it's because of trade. Specifically, the galleon trade, where Chinese technology and goods came to the Philippines, transferred boat, and was sent out during Spain. And you can see this reflected even in our architecture. So if you look at these houses, okay, who constructed them? Who owns every hardware store in the Philippines today? Chinese. It did not change. So back then, you were looking at the same kind of technology that the Chinese were using over in Beijing and mainland China, but now given a sort of trying hard social climbing mestizo twist. So it was these houses that were now going Espanol, trying to be West, which defined our architecture, right? But what made Intramuros really interesting was this city of illusions, a city made out of 7 volcanic ash churches called Intramuros. And this was really the specific spiritual center of where our city grew. I know it sounds kind of weird coming from me, right? But we cannot deny that Catholicism was the basis of Manila's history. And this pretty much was our Vatican. And to show you just how much Catholicism has affected or is part of our history and Intramuros, how many churches do you go visit on Maundy Thursday every Holy Week? How many churches are in Intramuros? 7. It was kind of like a pilgrimage city where one would go and they'd go to see the Manila Cathedral, they'd go see the San Ignacio, the San Antonio, the San Francisco, they'd see the Saint Ignatius and the Santo Domingo. But then with the coming of the Americans in the year 1898, bang, the city would change. And that small little city that we know over there at the delta of the Pasig River would blossom out, going up towards a place called Capital City, now known as Quezon City, expanding into places going down a street called Dulo ng Bayan, or the edge of town, known as Rizal Avenue, and would take you to the edge of nowhere, a place called Caloocan. But you can see that now, with the Americans coming, these Chinese, Spanish houses were now given an American twist. All of a sudden, English words came along. All of a sudden, you had ice cream. All of a sudden, you had what I like to call Manila Pansit. All of the electric wires going across everything. You can see that things never changed back then as in today. The Americans would also bring over new technologies. These volcanic ash and seashell houses built with timber were now being torn down and replaced by Art Deco concrete masterpieces with Otis elevators. And it was also because of trade. But now, it was reversed. Instead of Chinese goods coming to the Philippines and going out towards the West, Western goods were now coming to the Philippines and being brought out to be sold to the rest of Asia. And with the Americans also came new architectural styles. So now we had California Mission. Now houses in Manila were looking more like Beverly Hills. And this is a house that was located in what is the empty lot in front of Aristocrat on Ross Boulevard. So you can see that they also would bring things like movie theaters. They'd bring things like a tram, automobiles. And you can see that we're driving on the British side of the road back then. And they'd bring over an educational system, like the State University of the Philippines. And this would be our great equalizer. Because if we didn't have the public education system of the Philippines will still be stratified into the Spanish, Chinese landed elites who could only afford to go to places like Ateneo, right? And become part of the upper echelon society. But now, thanks to public schools and public state universities like UP, a farmer's daughter could now become the president of the Philippines. But the Americans also brought a different institution. The power of the Catholic Church was now kind of weakened because they brought over government systems, Senate, Congress, the judicial system, the legislative system, the executive system. And now, instead of the Catholic Church getting money from your pockets to create public works, it was now the government who was getting money from your pockets to create public works. And it's also very liberating for the Filipina, because this educational system now equalized her along with the rest of everybody in the Philippines. And you can see that no longer did she need to wear 25 kilos of cloth, but now she only needed to carry 12 kilos of cloth. And all was very good in the city of Manila. And it was now what I like to consider a wonderful, one-of-a-kind city where East met West, where organic met inorganic, where the old met the new. This is Ermita. To the top, you can see Luneta Park and the Rizal Monument, Ross Boulevard. And to the left, you can see Army-Navy Club, and the U.S. Embassy was not even built yet. And you can see on the upper right-hand side over there, that square is, Paolo, is that Senate? That's the Senate building. And as I said, East and West. And it was all a happy dance between the Filipinos and the Americans and the Spanish and the Chinese and the natives who were living here. But the real reason why the United States really liked us was because of the military. As we know, until recently, we housed two of the largest military installations of the United States, Clark Air Base and Subic Naval Base. And it's because of that military presence that we got involved in a little tea party called World War II. And that's when things really changed for us. Because in February of 1945, in a war that wasn't even ours, because it's not called the Philippine-Japanese War, it was called the World War II, when Douglas MacArthur came to Manila to liberate us from this dude named General Yamashita and Tomoyuki Yamashita, they completely destroyed the city of Manila. And that's why I say it's an illusion. Because everything that you see there now is only kept inside our head. And that's where I really think Manila would take a turn. This is an American tank, not a Japanese tank, going through Fort Santiago. And this is when I really feel that Manila sort of lost its sense of urbanity. When all of a sudden, the city of Manila as a city had to redefine itself. And also pretty much is the city that we see today. Because look, this is Manila after World War II in February of 1945. Manila in February of 1945. Manila today. Manila today. Manila 1945. Manila 1945. Manila 1945. Manila today. And that's what obsesses me. The past and trying to bring it back together. And I think we did try. After the war, we rebuilt the city. A lot of American funding for the reparations came in. We rebuilt our larger, greater institutions like Senate, like Congress, the post office. We brought back commercialization to Escolta. But unfortunately, without the city of Intramuros, the city kind of lost its political center, its spiritual center. Our Vatican, the heart and soul, the city lost its soul, was gone. And all the churches moved. Santo Domingo now is in Quezon Avenue. St. Ignatius is now next door over in Ateneo. San Antonio moved to Forbes Park. And the city started sprawling out. And you can already see there the beginnings of the reclamation of the CCP complex up on the top of the building. And we started moving out to places like Cubao, places like Makati, and to the new walled cities of Intramuros, such as the villages of Dasmariñas, Forbes Park, where now you can see that we try to keep our civility in its own modern versions of Intramuros. And then this crazy woman came along, Imelda, in the 1970s. And she tried, I gotta give her credit, she tried to bring back Manila. She tried by stamping her, unfortunately, bringing back Manila had to be something personal for her. So she started projecting her own dreams upon Manila. Her dreams of luxury, her dreams of arts and culture, And to bring the world to the Philippines, she built the world's most technologically advanced airport for 1981. And she built the MRT and commissioned a road that would eventually be her downfall, EDSA. And because of all of these things coming together, you finally see the city of Manila that we have today. A mumble-jumbled up halo-halo. A city that is greater than the sum of its parts, but at some moments can be really too much of a good thing. But what's left? So, in cooperation with GMA Channel 7, sorry, TV5, I know, I'm a kapatid. Bro. But it was Howie's idea, okay? So Howie Celdran approached me, and we tried to look for past. We found some photos by a man named Teodoro Protomartir. And with those photographs, we started tracing what was left in the city. And there's quite a bit. Malate Church, back then. Today. CSIP building on United Nations Avenue, near Rojas Boulevard, back then. Still there today. This is an interesting one. I thought this was the middle of a field. And this just shows you how bad the war was. Apparently, after the war, you couldn't even know what street you were on because everything was so overgrown. That's actually Bayview Hotel. This here, Bayview Hotel. And this is the most interesting one. This is Carina Grandstand. But I was wondering, why does Carina Grandstand have Luneta Hotel and Bayview Hotel right behind it? Apparently, Luneta Grandstand was on the side of Ross Boulevard. And it was only in the 1960s or 50s, I think, when they tore it down and they moved it over to the other side. So that is now this. Okay, and this is Independence Day 1945. General MacNutt taking down the Philippine flag, taking down the American flag, putting up the Philippine one. It's now a tree in the middle of Carina Grandstand. And this is the most interesting one. The former Protestant Church of Manila for the American community is now here at the Waterfront Hotel. Ministry of Justice, Court of Appeals, City Hall, the Met, Pasig River. And so I really think that there's still a lot for us to work with. Okay. But how did I make my past present itself to me? Okay, because I grew up in a really horrible place called Dasmariñas Village, where I studied in San Agustin. So my whole world, between the ages of 8 until I graduated high school, I lived in Dasmariñas Street. I went to San Agustin. My world was a quarter kilometer long. And that's how big my world was. It was a very sad world. But lucky for me, after I graduated high school from San Agustin, I went to this place. I was a geek, so I was smart enough to go to a place called University of the Philippines, Diliman, batch 9020181. To UPFA. And that's when I started getting obsessed with past culture, really discovering myself, looking at the past, and trying to really figure out myself by incorporating myself with the city that surrounded me, and not just the Dasmariñas Village. And so there, I opened up a little theater company called Walang Pamagat, which is a performance art company that was about making up Philippine history. So I'd make my own myths, I'd write my own stories, and then we'd perform them in little parking lots or little construction sites all around Ermita and Malate. And from UP, I went to finish my education in Rhode Island School of Design in New York, and I continued trying to use the city as a theater, that theory, the city to define myself, but now since I didn't have Manila, I just made my own maquettes that were small, my smaller versions of Manila. I blew them up life-size, and I now had Americans doing the stories for us in the between. And so it gave me my final project actually gave me an award. And the award that I won gave me enough money to move to New York City. And then there, I really honed in on my theater. I worked for Socrates, I worked for Bill T. Jones' Arnie Zane Dance Company. And then I came back to Manila, and I guess the rest is history. Intramuros has now become my theater. And the story of Manila's history has become my script, and I am the actor trying to convey my past to other people, and especially Filipinos, so they can find some footing in the future. And it's worked out for me. So I do the Intramuros tour. This is a typical tour I have every day using the past. I have my Imelda Marcos tour, which is about martial law. And to honor the city that I love, every year I do on the day that Manila died, which is the last week of February, I do a barter tour. You can come and pay anywhere you want, ensaimadas, a book. And we do a tour and then release 120 spirit balloons into the air to remember the city that was lost in the war. And I've also extended to bike tours. My advocacy has been extended to other things like tourism, protesting theocracy, trying to fight for secular society, trying to fight for the RH bill. And my last work, which is still mixed reviews, where I used Manila Cathedral as my stage. And so I guess that conversation that I have with the city of Manila is, I think, what defines me and helps me be confident in the future, because the more I define Manila, the more I understand who I am. Because if you really can't find beauty and poetry in Manila, you'll never find it anywhere. Thank you.